At the camp, they typically used large wooden barrels, about a meter in diameter, carved from tree trunks for bathing. However, out in the wild, there was no such luxury. Lu Xinrui simply used clean water to wash the blood out of her hair and from the pendant. Fortunately, her hair was already cut short, making the task easier. She then sprinkled a yellow powder on herself and her hair. Soon, her body emitted a faint but pungent smell. Though not pleasant, it masked the remaining scent of blood. The area where her arm had been struck was now swollen and bruised, but thankfully, there was no bone damage. Lu Xinrui took a spare bone knife from her pack and attached it to her belt. Despite having 3 spare bone knives, breaking one on the first day was unexpected. After another 2 or 3 hours of travel, Big Bear finally announced that they would stop and set up camp for the night. The day was 32 hours long, so even after walking for 5 or 6 hours in the afternoon, it was not yet dark. Lu Xinrui had no knowledge of setting up a camp, but she didn't need to worry about it. The hunting team had clear divisions of labor. She hesitated before joining Clown, Ace, and a few other hunters to gather firewood. Compared to noon, they needed more firewood for the night to keep the fire burning until morning. Fortunately, they were in a forest, making it easy to gather materials. After dinner, Big Bear assigned the night watch shifts. She and Ayama were on the first shift, while Clown, Ace, and Bloodblade were on the last. Lu Xinrui understood that this was Big Bear's way of looking after the newcomers. Even though standing watch in the middle of the night was more disruptive to sleep than the first or last shift, she appreciated the consideration. Besides, she couldn't sleep immediately like most of the hunters. Today was her first night camping out, and after such an exhilarating day, she was too excited to sleep. Despite being surrounded by men, Lu Xinrui felt surprisingly at ease, which was astonishing given her previous attack, perhaps because I've grown stronger. No, her strength was only relative to ordinary people. The other hunters could still easily overpower her. So, in the end, it was because she didn't sense any malicious intent. While some had initially been hostile, a day of working together had eased her into the group. She could now talk to them and gradually match names to faces, BB, Jialan, Cube, Purple Star, and so on. As night fell, the others lay down to sleep. Lu Xinrui and Ayama sat by the fire for the first watch. It was chilly at night, so Lu Xinrui moved closer to the fire for warmth. The surroundings gradually quieted down, though this peace was short-lived. As soon the hunters began to snore in a cacophony, Ayama smiled apologetically. Sorry. It seems you'll have to bear with this for a few days. It's fine, Lu Xinrui replied, though she doubted she could sleep through the loud snoring. She smiled and changed the subject. By the way, won't their snoring attract animals? It might, but there's nothing we can do about it. Snoring isn't something they can control. Besides, isn't that what you're here for, watching the fire? Bloodblade's voice came from behind Lu Xinrui as he got up, walked to the fire, and stretched out his hands to warm them. Unlike with Ayama, Lu Xinrui spoke more freely with him. Aren't you going to sleep? Yeah, Bloodblade, if you don't sleep now, you might nod off during your watch, Ayama said with concern. I know. I'll go in a bit. I just couldn't sleep with all this noise, so I came to chat for a while, Bloodblade said, yawning. Ayama looked at Lu Xinrui knowingly and smiled. Bloodblade had been in the hunting team for a long time, so it wasn't the snoring keeping him awake. He was likely worried about Charui. What do you want to talk about? Bloodblade was stumped. He had used the noise as an excuse. He turned to Lu Xinrui for help. Well, tell me about the camp and the hunting team's history, Lu Xinrui suggested. All right, Bloodblade pondered for a moment, then began. The first person in the camp to wake up from the slumber was the leader. He single-handedly saved Big Bear, the merchant, and Yanzi. When more people gathered and needed a leader, he naturally became the leader. This was about half a year ago. As more people woke up, they gradually rescued others, like Hawkeye and me. Eventually, the camp got organized, and we began to divide tasks. Initially, we didn't have distinct teams like the hunting, foraging, and logistics teams. Essentially, the leader indirectly or directly saved all our lives. Without him, we'd have died in our sleep, Lu Xinrui nodded as she listened. Although she was directly saved by Yanzi and the doctor, Bloodblade was right. Without the leader, none of them would have survived. The earliest members of the camp did all kinds of work. However, this system was too chaotic. It was Zhuan Yuan, one of the first people saved, who proposed dividing the tasks. He was the previous leader of the foraging team before Hawkeye. Unfortunately, he died in a beast attack shortly after. Then the leader reassigned some hunting team members to the foraging team. Hawkeye told me about this, Lu Xinrui added. Bloodblade nodded. Exactly. That incident was the reason. Initially, the hunting team had the most members. Lu Xinrui was a bit surprised by this. As I said, the earliest members did all kinds of work. The environment was much harsher then. To survive, you needed guts. Since the camp was mostly men, many chose the hunting team when we divided tasks. The foraging and logistics teams were seen as safer but less honorable choices. However, after Zhuan Yuan's death, the leader had to transfer some hunters to protect the foragers. Though some foragers joined the hunters, as you can see now, a peaceful life dulled their edge. New members joining the hunting team faced high mortality rates. Those who survived were mostly from the original group. Gradually, more people chose the safer foraging and logistics teams, reducing the hunting team's numbers to what you see today. So that's how it is. Lu Xinrui was about to say more when the fire crackled, and a log split in two, falling to the ground. Distracted by the story, she had neglected her watch duties. Feeling embarrassed, Lu Xinrui grabbed some wood and added it to the fire. Stacking the wood correctly was an art she hadn't mastered. Seeing her struggle, Aiyama took over. Let me handle it. He arranged the wood skillfully, and soon the fire was burning brightly again. By the firelight, Lu Xinrui noticed strange marks on Aiyama's hands. Aiyama. Your hands, oh, these, Aiyama spread his hands. His palms and fingers were covered in thick calluses, some of which had broken, revealing raw skin underneath, even oozing a bit of blood. Given his day's exertions, it was understandable. Aiyama's hands had been chafed raw from pulling the heavy raft all day. He seemed used to it, casually peeling off dead skin. Even Bloodblade winced at the sight. Where's your medicine? Don't worry about it. It's just a few scratches. I'm used to it. Besides, even if I apply medicine, it'll be the same tomorrow. Bloodblade fell silent. Aiyama's role in the hunting team was irreplaceable. As he said, treating the wounds wouldn't change the fact that he'd have to strain himself again tomorrow. No one in the hunting team had Aiyama's strength. If they split the load among several people to let him rest, it would weaken their defense and increase the number of injured. At least let me treat your shoulder, Bloodblade insisted. He looked back at Lu Xinrui. You should sleep. I'll cover your watch tonight. Lu Xinrui frowned, but, go sleep. This time, his tone was low but carried a chilling authority. Lu Xinrui reluctantly nodded, stepping over the sleeping hunters to the back of the camp. Following Aiyama's instructions, Bloodblade found the prepared herbal paste, then had him remove his shirt to apply it to his chafed shoulder and hands. The herbal juices seeped into the abrasions, making Aiyama wince. He dressed again and returned to the fire with Bloodblade. Bloodblade sighed with relief, his keen senses picking up Lu Xinrui's steady breathing as she fell asleep. Alone, the two men's conversation turned casual. Just as women like to discuss men, they soon focused on Lu Xinrui, the only woman among them. You're overprotective of her. Are you planning on a mentorship? Aiyama teased, winking. Get lost. She's my apprentice, Bloodblade retorted. Aiyama shrugged. What if someone else in the team pursues her? Bloodblade scoffed. She's still a minor. She'd be a high schooler back in the day. You guys are all in your 20s. It'd be pretty perverted. Don't forget, we're like monks here. Just because no one's interested now doesn't mean it'll stay that way. Besides, modern society has plenty of age gap relationships. If she's willing, what's wrong with that? We can wait until she's older. Bloodblade rubbed his temples. I feel like I've brought her into a den of wolves. If any of you have ideas, you'll have to get past me first. That's not fair, Bloodblade. You're hogging the spot. Bloodblade snorted. I don't care.